I'm not going to introduce our next speaker, somebody else is, but I'm going to introduce the person who's going to introduce the next speaker. And that is Rob Laurie. And I just want to say like 30 seconds worth of things about Rob Laurie. He's a lawyer, and he's been doing fantastic work in this sort of medicine sphere. He's been representing people that have had to fight against some nasty forces for a very long time. So he's part of our family for sure. Give a warm welcome to Rob Laurie.
All right, thank you very much. Very quickly, I just look out and see a lot of friends, colleagues, and clients, and I'm honored to be able to introduce our next speaker, who is Dance Chief Rueben George, a member of the Tsleil Waututh Nation, and is an Indigenous community organizer and spiritual leader. He's the Sundance Chief and the grandson of Chief Dan George, who was an Oscar-nominated and universally respected First Nation spiritual leader. I actually got to meet Rueben a number of years ago through a friend and a colleague of mine, Rex Weiler, who many of you may know. Rex was one of the original founders of Greenpeace. And he invited me one night because he'd heard I've been representing clients on hunting and fishing cases in Haida Gwaii, and he invited me to a pipe ceremony. And it was an interesting ceremony because there were visitors that were up from South Dakota, and these folks were meeting with Rueben in order to bring back the Sundance. So for me, this is a real honor to welcome to the stage. He's back there somewhere. He's warming up. But yes, a great honor for me to welcome to the stage Sundance Chief Rueben George. Rueben.
Thank you, brother. Thank you. Hello, ha ha ha, hey hey ah hey hey hey. Oh, hello, ha ha hey 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 hey. Hi, Chika. My beloved relations, thanks for having me today. You know, my grandfather, that was one of his songs, his Chief Dan George is one of the first people that was Indigenous in North America to be nominated for Academy Award. And he'd say, millions of people want to hear me. And he'd say, but all I want is the grass to hear me again. And I think that's what I'm going to talk about today. You know, but first let's say a little bit about myself. I'm a first generation or second generation residential school survivor. My mom went to residential school. No nice way to say what things happen there. You heard my brother Gabor talk about some of those things last night. And my mom went through some of that. She witnessed murders of little kids that were under 5 years old, and a whole bunch of horrible things happened, unimaginable things that would happen. And so what came after that is my dad went to day school, and the same things happened there, and he medicated himself with drugs and alcohol, and he ended up overdosing and dying. My stepdad did the same thing. I was 16, I'm 53. My mom never dated again, and she went through a lot of problems, but the biggest, what I was told, is the time period of when you're born to when you're 10 years old. That's the foundation the best foundation that you could receive from your parents is what you will always come back to. So we always try to raise them with a foundation that's positive and good and give them something to fall back on when they become adult or when they wander off that path a bit. But the foundation they got was abuse and trauma. And trauma's a hard thing. So anyway, that trauma was passed on to intergenerations. So I had the same problems, I do run ceremony, but I tell you, I'm not a good example about how to be some of the times. I have my faults and I have my issues, but just like each and every one of you, I join you in prayer to help to improve myself There's a lot of forgiveness I had to ask for in my life through my addiction. And there's a lot of forgiveness I gave because of the problems that happened to me when I was little. But that story is the same story of every Indigenous person across Canada. And some of that's still happening today. It's ridiculous to see that the jails for youth, for teenagers, is 50% today still First Nations. For women, it's 50%. For men, it's about 38%. So these things are still happening. Even in business, when Tsleil Waututh Nation was going to build a 200-unit complex, the city denied us. And not even 2 miles down the street, they approved a 500-unit. So it's always an obstacle. But what we have and what we continue to work with that helped us with the healing of the residential school experience and the intergenerational trauma and all these other obstacles come is actually ceremony. Ceremony is such an important thing in my life and the work that I do. When I finished school in my mid-20s, I opened up a healing center for youth, Duke's Youth Healing Center. And the good part of what I liked about that work is we hired 2 psychologists and about 10 elders, and we looked at any psychological program that was working in Indigenous communities. We took them and translated them because my grandfather said, anything you learn in university and in college about healing, there's a native teaching that says the same thing. So we translated a lot of that, and that's what I did for my career for about 15, 20 years. As I worked in jails and institutions, I worked in treatment centers, and I worked all over the place explaining that. But it was important to incorporate the culture into what we're doing. And I think that's why you're here today. Like trauma, well, then I moved on to some environmental work. And what I was taught is to incorporate our cultural and spiritual values into everything we do. In Salish law, Salish law, it's truth, family, health, and culture. That's our Salish law. And all those fundamentals of any religious and spiritual belief fall under those. Love, honor, respect, dignity, pride, compassion, understanding, truth, knowledge, wisdom, courage, and bravery. And when I was talking about that foundation, when you see a baby, I seen a couple yesterday, my friend Ray, she had her beautiful baby here, and you just look in the baby's eyes, and the baby will look at you so pure and so beautiful. And I just met the baby for the first time, but it loves me unconditional. Unconditional. And each and every one of us were born that way. The worst people in the world were born that way. No prejudice, no anger, no hate, no judgment, no colonization, none of that stuff. The foundations that I'm talking about, love, honor, and respect in Salish law, truth, family, health, and culture, that's how we're supposed to raise our kids. But in our society today is screwed up. My ex-wife, she's from Tsleil. They're a rich tribe in the States. And we had a choice to send our kids to public school or private school. And I said, let's try the private school. My son was grade 2. And it's like, I got called to the office, and I think this is in my book, and the principal said, you better come down here. Cedar made his teacher cry. And I got there, and I said, well, what happened? They said, well, you did this and this. And I said, no, my son, I'm asking him what happened. He goes, Dad, I'm not a robot. I told her I'm going to keep misbehaving until he kicked me out of this class because don't make me a robot. Let me be myself. And I went, that's not a problem. I said, so I took him out. But the opposite, and my daughter is smart. She goes, that's not a big deal, Dad. But to me it was, because it takes me forever to read a book. But she'd read a 450-page book in 2 days when she's like 9 years old. And she just flips it and reads it. And I was like, really? And I tested her, and of course she read it. But she thrived in that school, and I saw the differences and how society starts to condition us to fit in our silos and taking away our independence of who we are and our gifts of who we are. And in that school, they taught them different, because in public schools, you all know, maybe many of us, they say if you're really smart, you could be a doctor or a lawyer. If you're really smart. But they're teaching them different, and I saw it. They said, you're going to be leaders and wealthy like your parents. She graduated at 15. Like every one of her classmates, they all graduated at 15, and every single one of them took political science and business. be rich and wealthy and run things like your parents. So that's a difference. So we're taught that. And so not only has society in general and this colonial system that we all live through takes away our individuality of ourself, I believe what Gabor was saying last night is our world's in trauma, and that's what I've been saying too. It is. Look at that brutal war over there. Holy smokes. It's sad to turn on the TV and see children dying like that. But it's happening here too in a way. We don't have much time. Environmentally, where they said that we would be 5 years ago, we're already there, and they said it would take 40 years to get there. The atmospheric rivers and the floods and the fires, it's coming in our backyard. It's coming, and it's coming quick. In my short lifetime, 60% of the mammals died. 60%. And what's left of that, 65% of livestock. 50% of the world's species have died. And we're going in that trajectory that's not good. So when Gabor was joking about saving the world, I do environmental work. For 13 years now, as the lead in Tsleil Waututh Nation, we did a 1,200-page assessment, a spill analysis, a clean analysis, multiple economic studies, because the price per barrel fluctuated so much on the expansion of the Kinder Morgan pipeline, the Trans Mountain pipeline. We took him in court and won. But all the work that we did was based on Tsleil Waututh Nation law, like I did with therapy, incorporated those values. And I do that still now in business today. We started a hydrogen company, and it's so important to create something that's a no-brainer. There's no pollution coming out of it. It's water. We split that atom, H2O, and take the hydrogen, and then when we put it back together, it combusts, and that's where we get the power to run the engine. But it's a no-brainer, but what we need is our collective thought of independence that could take us out of our silo and help us. And I've been doing that for about 30 years, self-induced higher state of spiritual consciousness where I experienced a little bit of heaven. Self-induced through meditation. And how we do it is a little bit different. I'll teach you smudge. And that's a beautiful little ceremony and I was lucky because I traveled all over the world and prayed with people in weird places in the outback in Australia, in Brazil in the jungle, Panama. I got bit by a spider in the jungle, and I was like 4 hours away from a hospital. And this is a funny story. I heard some Indigenous walking by, and I ran out there and I said, "Hey, look, I got bit and I'm sick." And I had a welt that big coming up, and I grabbed a leaf and I chewed it, and I said, "Can you do that? Can you put something?" And they went away and they came back and they had some leaves and they said, "Chew it and put it on there." And I was in the middle of nowhere, but I don't know where they got duct tape, but they duct taped it to me. And I was like, okay, that's awesome. But they do the same thing. I just did a ceremony a couple months ago with 12 priests in my sweat lodge. We're going to have a dozen rabbis, and we're going to do a bit of an environmental movement because those fundamentals of humanity are the same. Every religious and spiritual belief, love, honor, and respect, all those things that I mentioned. But it's us human beings that screwed up. We screwed up. But we have to look on what we're doing and why we're doing it. So in ceremony, you come, I teach you how to smudge. And in all these religious and spiritual ceremonies, they'll take any of the four elements, fire, earth, water, and sky. You combine any two of those with intention, the spirit could be born out of it. So when you light a smudge, a candle, incense, when you light it, that's a spirit, but with your intention. And hopefully it'd be with the intention of fire, earth, water, the fundamentals, love, honor, and respect, and all those good things. But if you need healing, you take that spirit and you put it on you. And you see when you light the smudge here, it's here physically. It's here physically on earth, but when it goes into the heavens. And that's when you smudge off and send it away. So sweat, I see in a lot of ceremonies we could have a relationship with water, with the air, with the earth. But it's a little bit hard with fire, and we make it really hot so you could start to experience a little bit of why and what fire is and create that relationship with it. But we put all those things together and it creates prayer. Our vision quest, we do that too. Our pipe ceremony. All those things, it could take a long time to learn. It could take a long time to learn. But when you're ready, and I used to say, don't take something that brings you there until you could get there on your own. And that's what I teach is people how to get there on their own. Then they come to Sundance, and then they experience a higher state of spiritual consciousness. I think different now, because so far we put about 80, 90 residential school elders through our psychedelic programming, and nothing but good results, and about 250 Indigenous people. Nothing but good results. But in our integration, that's where we go back and teach them those things that they should have learned in the first place. But that's a good start, to start with your soul pure. Any ceremony house, or longhouse, or sweat lodge, or whatever it might be, synagogue, how it's supposed to be is that when you're comfortable, your spirit could expand to the size of the room. And you have a heartbeat that can make it happen over and over again. And see, you have some trauma on your mind, and you could shrink it. And I say that trauma could stick on you. Because I know when two things come together, a spirit's born, but each and every one of you here know and understand what I'm saying because you love somebody. I love my partner. I love her dearly. We do ceremony together so we can move forward together. So when two people come together, they could form a spirit of love. And every culture around the world honor that. And they do a ceremony and they call it marriage. That's a spirit of love. But if our world's living in trauma, we have the spirit of trauma stuck on us too. And it could be intergenerational. It could be intergenerational in the sense that you have an open wound and it needs stitches and antibiotics and care and being careful with it. But in ceremony, when we let our spirit expand to the size of the room and we have a spirit of trauma here, every time we let our spirit expand, it shrinks and goes away. And that's what happens in our ceremonies. But it could last for a couple days. Me, sometimes it wasn't too long, especially with my road rage driving out of a sweat lodge. I'll be like, somebody goes like this to me and I go, ah! Ah! There goes my good spiritual feeling. Lasted 2 hours. Hey, honey, I'm better at it, right? I grew. And actually, it was medicine that helped. It was. It really was. Here's a funny story. I was driving downtown, and this guy, I turned right, and he ran a red light, and I sort of cut him off, but he ran the red light. And he pulled up, and he's yelling at me, and I did a ceremony with medicine, and he pulled up, and I was like, hey, bro, come on. And he's still yelling at me, so I drove past him, and I didn't park beside him, but he pulled up and parked beside me, and he started going, hey, it only affected your life for 2 seconds. No, hey, 2 seconds. And he goes, okay, sorry, brother, sorry. And I was like, okay, good. But it helps. That's my testimony for medicine. But intergenerational trauma, it's in different forms. And I see when people take money. I went to the Kinder Morgan AGM when they owned that pipeline that comes to Burnaby. I went to the AGM and I prayed actually, I'd debate Richard Kinder. And they phoned me and they said, hey, could you get to Houston, Texas and go to Kinder Morgan AGM? And I said, yeah. They said, you got 2 hours to get to the airport because we're booking your flight. And I said, perfect. The next morning I walked in the Kinder Morgan building in Houston, Texas. And I told him, we're going to beat him. And anyway, he started yelling at me. And it was like in a room like this, a bunch of people like this. And when he's yelling at me, and I said, look, I'm right. And that's why he's mad. Do smart things with your money. Do smart things with your money. If I'm right and he's mad because we're going to stop it, you better reinvest in what you're doing. They did. Their stock fell by 60%. They're a $350 billion company. Their dividends were cut by 74% 3 months after we spoke there. When I shook his hand, this is my point. I shook his hand. And it was weird because my teachers say as soon as drugs or alcohol come inside of you without that intention, your spirit leaves you. It doesn't go away, it just leaves you. And you can see the glaze in people's eyes. And money did that to him. Because when I shook his hand, there was nothing there. And he was making choices for himself to have more money. But what I'm getting to is we make choices for our future generations. Because I tell you this, he was so sick, he was killing people at the Alberta tar sands. Highest concentration rate of cancer, and he's killing people and didn't care because he's making lots of money. But there's experiences that we have, each and every one of us, when we take the medicine. And we could close these wounds of our trauma and of the intergenerational trauma. Because it could be passed on too. In the way we believe is 7 generations, but studies show us 3 generations, or 2. Our grandparents' trauma we could take on. And this dysfunctional society I live in. I remember going to school, and they're teaching us psychology, and I was like, oh, this is brutal. They're teaching us how to cope in a dysfunctional society and to help people. And it's not right, because in psychology or any healing, we could heal you physically, mentally, and emotionally, and that's what society teaches. But what I'm talking about is the spiritual healing that we need as a people, as a community, as a race, as our world, as Richard Kinder. You know, he freaked out and he's yelling at me like it's going to hurt his kid or something, but it was his money I was affecting. That was his relationship with me. It's so blind that I couldn't see nothing there. Like he's drunk or something, that he was making those choices, but our world's based on that. And I do something about it. And I did, and I am. But this is how I came to it. My first sweat lodge, about 30 years ago, my girlfriend at that time, she's like, I try to hug you and you push me away. And I go, no, I don't. She went to hug me and I went like this. She goes, see? And I went, oh, geez, she's right. She says, you need therapy and help. So I did. But I couldn't even hug somebody with a rough side of myself. And when even we sleep together, I pulled my arm away from her, put a pillow in between, then I could go to sleep. She goes, all I want to do is love you. But I was so rough around that, I couldn't do that. And I remember my first sweat lodge. All those things I'm talking about, the spirit expanding and everything doing good. I crawled out after crying. And my grandpa died, Chief Dan George, when I was 11. I said, I'm not going to cry anymore. And I didn't. But when I cried that whole ceremony, something happened. They said, you could pray. And I said, how do I do that? They said, ask for good things in your life. I said, oh, I could do that. And I opened my mouth. First time since I was 11, just cried. Then I crawled out on my hands and knees, and these 2 guys stood there, and they grabbed me, and they picked me up, and they just hugged me. It was like the first time since I was 11 that somebody hold me. I was like, so beautiful. So beautiful. So that's the wounds that started to heal. That's the intergenerational trauma. And happy my mom, in her 80s, she still comes to sweat. When my kids were babies, they're 27 and 25. When my son is a baby, he goes, how long have I been sweating, Dad? The last sweat we had last week. And I said, well, since you're 3 months old. My mom would pass him through the door. And it was 3 generations of Georgia saying, no more. Let's do some healing. Let's move together. Because I tell you, my life, I wasn't good. I was a violent SOB, and I go to nightclubs, and it got to the point somebody come up to me and say, you Rueben George? And I go, yep. Well, let's go. And I look at my friends, I'll be right back. I'll go fight. I can fight and come back and continue my night. And it was bad. But I was so angry. In my addiction, I hurt people. And I was so disrespectful to women. But I was a prisoner of that guilt for so long. For so long. I needed to heal that. And what I was doing wasn't helping as much. And then all those things that happened to me when I was bad, when I was little, was physical, mental, emotional, sexual abuse, all those things that happened to me when I was bad, I was a prisoner of that too, of that shame. So I don't know if Empire Health Group, they're still here. They took me in the first ceremony. And it was hardcore because I don't know if I took way too much. I looked like 9 grams my first time, and then I took a whole bunch of other stuff, but it helped. I couldn't move, but it helped. I was like, what the hell will you do to me? He said, I can't move. Actually, I was standing up like this, and they said, well, you could lie down, and it hit me, and I looked down and said, I can't get down there. And then somebody said, jump. So I dove. But what happened was so profound. I had an intention there. And when people are new, I say, don't put any intention yet. Just have, hopefully, a spiritual uplift. But I asked for it, and boy, did I get it. And I said, I want to deal with the trauma I don't remember. That's that shame and guilt. The bad things I did, bad things that happened to me. And my trauma is an orb. It was this big, just an orb. And I was like, that was that spirit and the ancestral things that were passed on. And I saw it, and it's anguish, hurt, pain, hate. Just the orb of a spirit of trauma, because remember, the spirit of love is there. But this is spiritual trauma of hurt and anguish, intense anguish. So holy crap, you guys better tell me I'm okay, because I'm not. No, this is what you wanted to deal with. This is what you asked for, and they held me. Just held me. Good man just held me. And they said, surrender to it. And I said, my stubborn self is, I don't surrender to nothing. Then it got worse. He said, no, this is what the hell, it's getting worse. Surrender. And I said, I don't surrender to nothing again. And then it got worse. 5 hours. And I was like, oh. And he said, surrender. And I was exhausted because my whole body was tremoring. And it was in July, and it's hot summer, and I swear I was cold, and I took everyone's quilts, and I had 7 quilts on me, and I was sweating, and I was like, I'm cold. And then they said, again, just surrender. Then I just went, poof. That trauma left. It's gone. I walked this path like this for some of those things that were deep inside, that were intergenerational. And then I created a new one of freedom. Freedom from the guilt and the shame. And I replaced that. That was the spirit, and I replaced it with love. Honor, respect, dignity, pride, compassion, understanding, truth, knowledge, wisdom, courage, bravery. All those new spirits came. And I was like, damn, this is good. This is good. This is a new me. And then I started growing from there, and each and every one of us, it's important when you have this experience, maintain it. And whatever you do, and I say, I'll take you with us. It stops here. It starts here. It starts there. But then you start to see and to understand. But what you went through was an experience, and you maintain it. Then when you maintain it, then when you're ready, do it again. Go higher. The way I know spirituality, the way I'm taught, it's infinite. Don't ever think you could go to a ceremony and think you don't need to grow on something. Because spirituality is infinite. And why not? Why not love somebody more? Hey, honey. Yeah. She's saying, yeah. Why not love your kids more? Love life more? But when you achieve that even, you understand that, you experience that, but what's the resolve behind that? What's the resolve? You know that, you feel that, you experience that. What's the resolve? In my ceremonies, when you come, my sweats and things like that, Sundance, so you're going to leave feeling better. If you leave feeling better, you have a responsibility with that. Share it. Share that love. But with the creativity of what this is going to give you and what it's going to strive for, because I learned this from my teachers. Phil Lane, he spoke last year. Gujal from Haidawai, he spoke last year. They're really, really good, inspirational men for me. But they have a room that's just a spiritual room with all their drums and pipes and ceremonial effects, sage and sweetgrass and all this stuff. The problem in their family, they'll work on it in that room. and find a way. With their community, they'll find a way. For a vision for their community, they'll find their way. Gujal, since then, he works in Haida Gwaii, they're going to take back 95% of Haida Gwaii. The Haida Gwaii people and the community that lives there, they want that. They said, you're doing so good at that. Why don't you administer the hospital and the prairies and everything else, the mail? It's a huge thing. But that's where their vision comes from. And you have that capability to create that vision too, to make this world a better place. To make it a better place. You know, it's common sense, you know, maybe you want to go help some homeless downtown, which I do. I volunteer down there. Actually, Gabor, some of my relations live in the building he worked in for 10 years or something crazy. Right down there in the hardest place. One of my friends ran that place, and she said it was brutal. And I've been there, and it's brutal, or people are going through that. I was on the radio one time, and this guy goes, isn't it sad that we have to put up with the people that are stealing from us? And I was trying to phone in. I said, it's sad that the people are dying there, and you're talking about your things getting stolen. That's sad. That's your colonized way of thinking. So when I'm saying that, if you go down there and you can't help somebody who might not want to be helped, but you could feed them, you have to use your common sense on what you could do and what you could give to maintain who you are. Like I said, maintain who you are. Maintain who you are when you achieve that, what I experienced in that ceremony with my friends. And then I maintained it. And this is what I say to you. Maintain it. Then when you're ready to go at it again, bring somebody with you. Bring a couple of people with you. And start to share that. Start to share that, because that goals and the visions and dreams, that's what I do. That's what I did with Richard Kinder. I prayed I'd debate him. 2 days later, I was in Houston, Texas. I prayed we'd do something around environment. I met Omar, and we created a company, Salish Elements. We're going to do pretty good, I think. I know. I pray in that room, and you know, we're going to build a plant in Lillooet. We just verbally so far partnered with a company that will build us trucks. There's some of the Indigenous communities, and no, not just Indigenous, some of the communities way up north, mixed Indigenous, non-Indigenous, they're spending $20 million a year on diesel. We could switch them to hydrogen. We're going to do that. But we sit in the rooms, and Omar prays with me. He's Indigenous from Egypt, similar culture. He prays with me, and we pray on these things. And you know, we make that path to our goal easier, because what we do with this belief, with a strong belief that comes out of you using this medicine, is that if we believe in something, everything we are mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically, just believe in our goal. Eventually our spirit's going to believe in that goal and make our path to our goal easier, and with our ancestors. Because that's what I hope, is you have an intimate relationship with your spirit through this process you're going through, but also your ancestors. And who do you believe is to be God or Creator? It's essential. It's essential. So the resolve again. When you get over the hump of your trauma, what is that resolve? And how do you feel? How could you be part of a community? How could you make a community grow? How could you make the world a better place? How could you do that? It's with your creative mind. Look at all our life about how we're told we're incapable of doing when we went to public school and elementary school, and they said, if you're really smart, you could be a doctor or lawyer, but since you're not, you're going to work at Walmart. You know? And I see that sometimes, and I go, I wonder what their gift is. I wonder what they have that makes them better than everybody else. Just each and every one of you have a gift that makes you phenomenal and beautiful. God, you're just beautiful just the way you are. Geez, look at TV. Only 2% of the people look like that. What the hell? My daughter's one of them now. She just got a big role in the movie. bragging time. She did a 15-minute short and it had huge success. She's doing this tour, and she National Geographic asked her, "Can I say that?" Well, I did. Well, they got her to do a miniseries, so that's great. My son just got a promotion. He helps foster kids get in connection with their culture. Then he's up right now meeting with the chiefs up in Secwepemc territory to bring their awareness to all the mining and all the other stuff. And the chief said, "We'll help you." So I'm happy for him too. He did that today. But my kids, I became back to that resolve, back on the other side of the hump. And it happens multiple times. Not just this one to heal yourself, but remember when I was talking about the baby, no prejudice, no anger, no hate. That's where we're supposed to raise a baby. We're supposed to raise it from that point of that beauty that it is already with those fundamentals of humanity, but our society screws all that up. Elementary school, all those things. Bless the teachers, I'm not saying anything bad on them. It's just the curriculum that they're forced on them because they try to teach something else, they get punished for it. That's something that would be helpful, that motivate them in the way that we're talking about. So this medicine we take, it has a spirit that needs to be treated with holiness and reverence, just like you would want to be treated by somebody who loves you. That medicine has a spirit. Like any other two things that come together, a spirit's born out of it. When you take that medicine, what you're going through is your spiritual experience. And if you ask for something hard like I did to deal with that trauma, it might come. It might come anyway, even if you don't ask her, you know that. But we start to shrink those and start to grow from that point. And ask for that freedom. Replace it with the most powerful thing is love. Happiness. It's important. It's important that we do that. Holiness and reverence. You take it, and the experience you have is that spirit. Because in the ceremonies that I do, it takes a lot of dedication and time. It took me a couple of years, which is a short period of time, to get to the higher state of spiritual consciousness. I got to the point where I could maintain it for 4 full days, self-induced higher state of spiritual consciousness. But with this medicine, it's not that much work. It's not. Because when you take it, because how I has learned is, I don't eat and drink for 4 days. Because I became the Sundance chief, I have to have my wits with me, and they told me they make me eat, the older elders, but they weren't there last 3 years, so I snuckily didn't eat. But what happened is, with the effort of that idea is you're not nourishing your body with food or water, but you're constantly 100% in prayer the whole time, that you're nourishing your spirit with prayer, and that's what gives you the strength. So after a while, I had that experience. And when I travel in different countries, people who had that experience find me. One elder from Guatemala, this is how we met. She goes, "Son, do you know why I love you?" I said, "Yeah, I do." She goes, "I'll tell you anyway." And that's okay. She goes, the stars are the reflection of heaven. She says, "I see these stars in your eyes like you see them in my eyes. When we look at each other, we both know we experienced heaven." The self-induced higher state of spiritual consciousness. Happened in Australia too. Within 4 hours of meeting the elders, I said, "I'll do ceremony with you. I'll come with you guys." And they looked at me, "What?" And the elder said, "Yeah, he's ready." So they painted me up and everything, and I was all yellow and blue, and there we went. But they knew too. And in Panama and Brazil, the same thing. Southeast Asia, the same thing. There's still those ceremonies that bring us to the higher state of self-induced higher state of spiritual consciousness. No medicine. And that was such an important thing to learn those things before I started doing this. And it's by coincidence I'm doing this because I met with you guys, Empire Hall, for like 6 months, and they're like, you got to try it. How it happened is I volunteered at a men's treatment program, and the guys are falling off and started using drugs and drinking. I was like, oh, I just need something. I need some. About 2.5 years ago, I said, I need something. And I was looking on the internet, and ayahuasca popped up. I went, oh, I remember this. I already did Native American church in South Dakota with my relations down there, and so I understood a bit of it. And then I saw my friend post something, so I phoned her, and Dr. A, and she talked to me for like 3 hours. So I phoned our business partners, and I said, hey, check this out. And Darwin Douglas and Otis Jasper, Justin George, are former chiefs of their nations, but Darwin says, I'm already on it, been on it 6 months. I said, well, let's figure something out. So we put a team together, and they talked to us, and you got to try it. And they said, no, we're spiritual, we're sober, we don't do things like that. And then I was sitting in a meeting, and I was like, oh, geez, I can't be telling, this is our own spiritual teaching, can't be telling somebody what to do unless you're willing to do it yourself. So I said that in a meeting, and all the guys went, oh, okay, let's try it. But it took 6 months for us to try it, and since then, Sacred Circle, with partnership with Phil Lane's group, and we did about 80 elders and about 240 people. We're still moving pretty slow. We're still doing a lot of research and stuff, but I think it's important. I think how marijuana went, where Indigenous rights and our own sovereignty, where we made our own permits. We made our own laws around that. And I think we should do that again. Right, Robert? and that's what we're working towards. And I don't think any government's going to stop us from healing people from the mess that they created in the residential schools. They can't, and they won't. So that's what we're working towards. And I'm very thankful. Stephen, Mark, and your whole team. Paul, good to see you and your partner. Always great to listen to you. All the great speakers, raise my hands to you, In our Coast Salish way, I lift you up and honor you for all the work that you do, because this is important. It's important to find a way. It's important to start now. It's important to incorporate those values of what I'm talking about. Love, honor, respect, dignity, pride, compassion, understanding, truth, knowledge, and wisdom. It's important to treat it with the holiness and reverence that it deserves, because the benefits of taking that effort to do that are huge. To heal your ancestral wounds. Remember, it's infinite. Remember that you can never stop growing. Remember, I said, why not love more? Why not get over that hump of that, healing that trauma, maintain it, then move on and try again and bring somebody with you? It's important. Geez, I wish Richard Kinder would do that. I do. I'd give him more than I took my first time. Double dose that one. But they are listening, some of them. I think there is an opportunity that I'm starting to feel from all the work that I did, that some of the corporations and businesses that were our allies are really interested. I work with government at all levels, and they're interested. And I told them, it's amazing that I worked in a treatment center, and people would come there and deal with the issue for 6 weeks. And there'd be 10 therapists there monitoring 30 people. And here, there's a gift that we could help people with, that go 6 weeks with them. One issue, we could help them in one session. We could heal that wound and give them some freedom. Give them some freedom from the shackles that hold them down, of the shame and guilt that they held from the church, from Canada, and from what they did in those residential schools. Let them breathe again. Let them be happy for who they are. Let them see themselves be that child. No prejudice, no anger, no hate, no judgment. Be proud of who they are. Recognize and see they're beautiful just the way they are, like each and every one of you. It's important. It's important to feel blessed. It's important to feel loved. It's important to feel special. So I'm just going to read a little bit out of my book here. And then I'll take a couple of questions. So the last chapter in my book is, we'll take you with us. And what I mean is, what I'm talking about, it doesn't have to be my sweat lodge. It doesn't have to be my longhouse. It doesn't have to be my way. Just find a way. Find a way and meditate that's sincere, that's beautiful. Each and every one of you, if you go to a ceremony and you're disrespected in any way, you have no obligation to stay there. Go where you're comfortable and you feel safe and you feel loved and you know that you're going to be taken care of. It's important, but it could be yoga. My whole family did yoga. My mom did yoga. We loved it. My bro owns a yoga studio. My son's godfather on Commercial Drive. And, when you ask me to come pray, I'll come pray your way at your house. That's what I did at the church. 12 priests came, and I prayed with them first at their house. Then they came to my house in the sweat lodge. Come to my house, we'll pray my way. Red Cloud, at that time in the late 80s, he came to our family sweat, and they said, "Uncle, run the ceremony." He goes, "No, when I come to your house, I'll pray your way. When you come to my house, we'll pray my way. Run the ceremony for me, son," he says. And that's how it is. But find it safe and good, and really look close at those fundamentals that allows your spirit to expand to the size of the room, because your spirit's comfortable. Your spirit feels safe. It won't happen if you're not comfortable, if you're not safe. You're not loved. And that's what they did for me in that ceremony. I was loved. I was saved. I was like, don't touch me when I'm in ceremony. And I needed them to hold me. Brother held me. They took care of me. So when I say, I'll take you with us as a collective in whatever you do with the same purpose, the same goal to improve our life. We will take you with us. We'll take anybody with us who wants to learn a better way. It's clear what we need globally is more love and spirit, connection to our individual spirit, to our ancestral spirit, and to whatever you believe to be God or Creator to be, which in turn connects us to the spirit of all things that are good. The world is losing its connection to its lands, its waters, its airs, its energy of the sun. All those things we need to live that are rooted, all those things that we need to live, and that's rooted in trauma. The people don't love the earth or others enough to stop the harm and make things better. Itself a sign of trauma, in itself is a sign of trauma. As Tsleil Waututh people, we are healing from the trauma. We are healing from the hurt and our pain, and we will do this with you. We will open our doors to you, and we'll help you recognize the trauma that you carry, which prevents you from caring about the harm that has been done to you, to other human beings, and the living creatures, and to the earth. When you come into our ceremonial lodge, our spirits will expand to the size of the space and overlap one another in prayer. When that happens, we become brothers and sisters and family in ceremony. And that's where the healing takes place. So we will take you with us, and we will heal together. Hoichkasiam, thank you very much.
So we have a couple of minutes here for some questions, and there's one right there. We'll start there. Thank you.
Hey there. Thank you for your presentation. I have a question about the kind of protocol that you use in your ceremonies. I'm from Minnesota, by the way, and Minnesota tribe, and I'm here kind of doing some field research about how to do this type of work that you've created for your community. So I'm curious about kind of what the actual ceremony is like.
Well, there's a good book called Indian Givers. It was wrote a while ago, but it talks about how Indigenous people affected change in the world. Like one part of the book says the world's populations didn't start growing until learned about America's farming techniques. It didn't start growing. So my kids were really young when I read it to them. They're like 10 years old and they go, so it's our fault. But it talks about every nation in North America having a sweat lodge. And so I was adopted into two families, the Crow Dog family in Rosebud, South Dakota, but also Pompana family in Canada. They're both Lakota. But my first teacher was Cree. So I honor him, but what I changed into was our own Salish way. About 30 years ago, I was talking to my oldest elder back then, Uncle Bob, and I said, did we have sweats? And he goes, yeah, we did, but it's up to you to find out what we did in them. What I believe is there's a sequence, a rhythm, and a vibration in our ceremonies. And it's important to have them all. So it's important to sing 4 songs in the ceremony. It's important to call in the spirits and help have them. Because when you give tobacco to me, when you come to a ceremony or an offering, it doesn't have to be tobacco. It could be any medicine from earth, a sage, sweetgrass. When you give it, that's for your own ancestors. So all these things are in common. So when I travel the world and I've seen all these ceremonies, these fire, earth, water, and sky, and that's what we do in our ceremonies. So now the protocol is pray. Come pray. It's going to get really hot. There's 4 rounds. Drink lots of water. But when I need to and it gets close to Sundance, I do Lakota Lodge. But when people come, like Vancouver's the template of the world actually, but there's people right across North America, including Minnesota. I have good friends down there. That when they come, they're welcome to sing their songs. So I run a sweat. Coastal more than anything. I just helped 2 lodges get built in the island, and they said, you got to teach us. And I was like, Crow Dog said this to me because I brought a guy in to come and help me. I said, if you want me to run a Sundance, we have to train one of my buddies. We have to teach him. He goes, no, don't say teach him. He knows it. We're just going to show him our way. So I said that to them. I said, you know it. Just apply your teachings to that lodge. So that's what they do. They do a Coast Salish lodge. Any other questions? Sure. Yeah. I have a lot of elders that come to my lodge, a lot from home. A lot of the stories are being remembered and how things are done, and so it's.
So I wanted to thank you for showing healthy masculinity, for showing true vulnerability, and I'm curious about, you mentioned that you went through almost restorative justice type of thing where you had said that you had done things or treated women poorly and you came to this other side. I feel like this is a really important thing to understand in this space, especially because trespasses happen, hurt people, and we need to find a way to move through that and really uplift healthy masculinity and vulnerability and safety for men to heal. And I'm wondering if there's anything that you can describe to us about how that transition is done. Is there formality in healing harms done that can be done through this medicine work? Or is it just internal for you, when you're doing the medicine work, or is it part of community to restore that justice to those folks who have been hurt in the process?
Yeah, first and foremost, anything that I say is suggestions. And it's not written in stone because I said it. It's not law because I said it. But I know when I help with situations like that 2 people have a spirit, and they could come together and form a spirit of trauma and spirit of love. But that's what we need to address. Not just mentally, physically, emotionally, but spiritually as well. So whenever I help with any situation like that, I try to do that. But, I have a lot of really, really good elders that guide that process too, though. They're better at it than I am. So.
All right. Thanks so much, Ruben. Give him another hand, please.
All right, brother.